Once we have filled in our base colors, it's time to render in where light would hit these objects. So think of your entire drawing as not just something 2D, but an object in 3D space. Let's say that in this case, and in this scenario, we have a light that is coming from above and slightly to the right. In this case, because the breasts are protruding forwards, light would hit the top of the breasts. It may also hit the shoulders and even down to the clavicles. And I'm just using the simple brush available in the pack where it's got both sharp and blurred edges depending on your pen pressure. And you want to do this with every layer for different areas of color. So I've made a new layer above each base color layer which represents each layer of color that I'll be on, and made that as a clipping layer to the one below, noticing that as the light is coming from the top right, the breast area that has received the light will then flow on to where the bunny suit bra area is and overflow to that area. Notice that in the bra area there is a spherical curve, as we are imagining this to be a spherical shape. And it just does take experience to figure out how light affects certain shapes. So the benefit of this method is that you're actually going to be drawing the light based on shape, and the shape that you give your light bestows that sense of 3D reality to your illustration. Now, this left sleeve at the back is protruding outwards from the body. So if the light source is coming from the top, we might say that the body could be covering part of that arm in the background. So the light that hits the sleeve will just be in this lower half of the sleeve on the right-hand side. And if you can imagine the shape of this sleeve, the light will only hit areas that are facing upwards. The triangle that I have painted in for light in that posterior sleeve is that any areas below it are actually curving inwards, so into the page, and the surface above casts a shadow down, and that's why there is no light in that bottom half below that white triangle. For the collar, the light coming from the top and the right-hand side is shining down onto that top area of the collar. Because the collar, if you were to imagine, then after that top portion where it is facing upwards, the collar then changes into a position that goes straight down vertically, and the light which shines from above may not have a direct impact onto that area. Again, as a reminder that we aren't trying to draw something photorealistic here, and so all you need to do is give the impression of where the light is coming from and how that light forms a shape onto the objects that it's hitting. And in that way, you are creating an artwork. It's not a photorealistic style that we are going for here. Now, you might be thinking that all you've done is draw in a bit of light in these top areas. And so you might be thinking, well, we haven't colored in any of the other portions yet. And the fact is that you don't. You might be able to see that just by putting in these areas that give you a sense of a consistent light source, that everything else from this point on is going to fall into this context of this lighting. The benefit of this is that even if you don't do any further rendering with any of the remaining areas, it already gives you a sense of completeness, because in the areas of shadow and in the areas of light, between those colors where you have the midtones, etc., you actually have lower contrast. And so you don't actually need to be painting or rendering more And essentially all you'll be doing is adding in textures, adding in areas of ambient occlusion. Even if you were to lack detail or avoid adding in more details or painting or coloring to a certain area, it still doesn't matter because you've already got that overall sense of completeness. Let's practice putting in another light source. In this case, we'll have light coming directly from the front, so out of the page, and perhaps shining slightly to the right. In this case, the forefront of the light will be hitting this forward leg, the right leg, because that is protruding outwards out of the page towards us. And when the direct light wraps around this leg, which we can infer to be a spherical shape, there will be portions of shadow around the edges of this cylindrical shape. Where the belly is and where the thigh connects into the abdomen, there is an area of shadow here because it's actually going inwards, and it's a plane that is facing away perpendicularly from where we are. And so that's why we don't shade in this portion. This is another plane that's facing towards us, so we will add in light to this area as well. Again, excluding the areas that are going to be turning away from us. And so we haven't put in light that hits directly to the back of this figure. And it's going to be hitting the side of the breast here. We have an assumption here that this light isn't perfectly from the front. Perhaps it's a bit to the right or up a bit. Again, you don't have to be completely accurate when you're doing anime style illustrations. It's what kind of makes sense to yourself. We're now going to apply this to the suit layer. Again, any perpendicular planes towards the light will be filled in with light. And it will also hit the upper breast here. Given that the area under the breast is curving inwards and going away from the light, we haven't shaded in that entire breast area. Continuing on from where the light is hitting the thigh, that light will also be on where this stocking is, where it faces us. And given that this forearm is pointing out towards the viewer as well, this may also have an area where light is hitting. And whilst the posterior arm is in the back, if the light is shining from the front, maybe it would still have some light shining in on it. Again, trying to make our lighting scheme consistent. Where the light has been traveling off from the arm, we're going to put in the light continuing on onto the collar in that area. The top of the collar has not got any light hitting on it as it is bending towards the back. And imagining that the collar provides a shadow, a cast shadow onto the sleeve, and so the upper portion of the sleeve also would not have light hitting on it. And perhaps let us imagine that there is a bit of rim light hitting the back arm. And we'll finish off by having this light shine on the hand here. Now let's work on another example where light is coming in from the bottom. And you can even make this extremely simple, especially when you are shining light on object forms that are simplistic in nature. In this regard, we've got the single plane for the coat on the outside here, then onto the thighs, which are simple cylindrical shapes. And I've cut it off at an angle as we presume that there is a fading out of the light. We add the same light shining onto the stocking as well. And this simply looks like a streak of light running diagonally downwards. However, despite its simplicity, it's already enough to give you the context for this character and where they are in the environment and what the environment is doing, which already simplifies the process down for any further rendering. We'll also add in a bit of light here on the inside of the coat. And with the shaping here, think about this light is coming from the bottom left. It's hitting the left side of those thighs or the behind of the legs. And such, there will be a cast shadow onto the coat, which is why you have the straight line downwards followed by the light coming across. By simplifying your lighting into two main areas of light and shadow, you essentially remove all of the clutter that occurs when trying to render objects just based on the individual colors and textures of the object. You will see an example later on where we start rendering by painting in the shadows, which normally occurs with starter artists when they start drawing in an anime style. And essentially that gives you multiple points of focus where the detail is. When you start rendering with lighting as the main focus, your eyes are drawn to two areas, and that would be the area with the light and the area with the shadow. And so even if the focal points are not highlighted themselves or in the direct light, they still are able to be discerned because they are making up the portion of those two areas rather being one in many focal points. Now let's do another common lighting direction, which would be a backlighting. And so on the outside edges of the object, you will have something occur such as rim lighting, where the light just hits the edges of them. And this helps to build the volume of the character and the object as the light travels around the object. You'll notice that I am trying to add a bit of interest in it. You aren't just drawing a line around the object because the amount of light that will travel around the object depends on the curvature of the object. On the sleeve, you can see that depending on the folds of the sleeve, that the light will actually travel further in. You do also have to take into account if there is any direction to the backlighting. Is it coming from the right or the left? And so you won't always have a rim lighting for all areas of the light that is coming in. And you might have some rim lighting on the shoulder and neck here, and perhaps skimming the very top of the breasts. And even if the light is coming from the back, there may be a partial factor of reflected light or a directional light, and so we can have a small part of light hitting the very edge of the buttock here. And continuing on from where the breast is, we will use the very tip of the breast pads, the light shining down there, and around the borders for the rim light. And then you will have a very simple example of having a backlighting by thinking about where the light is hitting and the patterns that this light will create. What I'll do now is demonstrate an alternative way of going through this process, where many may be using much lighter values for their base coloring. And these are probably colors that are more frequently used in anime style art when people start coloring, using a lighter skin tone, and where the color white is expected to be more white rather than gray. And this is simply because many people start with a white canvas as well. And so if they were to use the color gray as their base color for a white coat, the coat would not look white at all, it would appear gray. And that's why it is, in my opinion, important to be starting off with a neutral color tone for your canvas background. Now that we've set these colors to something that might be more appropriate for what they are supposed to be, where the whites are white, skin tones are bright, the black tone for the suit is more lighter than in the previously. And when you start off with this value set, you would want to be coloring in where the shadows would lie. I find this a bit more difficult than starting off with darker values and adding in light, because then essentially I am able to shape where that light goes. In this method, you kind of have to do the opposite and erase out where the light would not impact on. This might be appropriate for your style if this is the way that your brain is able to visualize things better. And so let's do this light coming in from the front of the character, so from the right.